All right, peace and love, everybody. I am Akil Zafan Yazim Bey, Prime Minister of Meru State Republic, along here with two other heads of state of two other Moroccan states, Wazir Amir El and Wazir Kendon Bey, who will here shortly introduce themselves as we open up. Um, but I would like to say initially, this is a open forum for everybody to ask questions, comments. If you have any points that you would like to bring to the table, just say point of privilege, um, and I'll yield, or whoever is talking will yield the floor to you, and we'll continue the discussion as your point is raised. I won't be checking the chat, so if you put something in the chat, a question or a hand raise, I likely won't see it. So just make sure you say point of privilege. I yield the floor to either the Wazirs who would like to introduce themselves.
Yes, this is Wazir Amir Hassan El. I'm the Wazir of New Mecca, the Allodium Peridium of New Mecca, formerly known as State of Oregon. I'm glad to be here. Islam.
I'm Kendon Bay, head of state of Dia Dementes in Lauren, Morocco, Prius, Texas, where the colonial charter state of Texas used to be, and vice president of Trusteeship Council and co-chairman for the WRC, Islam.
All right, and also I will say that my daughter will be appearing in my house here soon. A lot of y'all know that she's sometimes in the videos a lot. So if you hear in the background, please excuse me. All right. So let's get started here. We'll get started first with a video uh, about how states or state governments are born. We'll start off basic and climb our way up. Uh, there's a lot of different points that that all the heads of state would like to bring to the table. So we'll get started here. But we'll start off with this video. It's about 6 minutes. And we'll stop and pause and explain things briefly as we go. All right.
I don't think there's any sound.
Can't hear it?
No, I cannot.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure why that is. Okay. Well, that canceled the video.
Hopefully it's not just me though. Just we can double check, make sure it's not just me.
I couldn't hear it.
Okay. Okay. So we'll cancel out the video. Hopefully we can get that figured out next time. So we'll start off with a few readings um, based off of the where we left off last time, the Vienna Convention Law and Treaties. So just to refresh our memories, this Vienna Convention Law and Treaties is exactly what it says, the law on all treaties, right? So it gets down to the narrow truth as far as the power of treaties, who can bind the treaties, the dominions, right, the values of it, etc. So this is not the one I wanted to bring up first. So we started off last time talking about full powers, right? Talking about some of the basics. Why is it doing that? Scroll down. Okay. So we're going to start with Article 7. All right. So Article 7 of Vienna Convention Law and Treaties. It says full powers is a person considered as a representing a state for the purpose of adopting or authenticating the text of a treaty for the purpose of expressing the consent of the state to be bound by a treaty if. So full powers is a person, right? This is a word that can cause a lot of confusion because what else is a person? A state, right? What else do persons got to deal with? Trust law, right? But how do you need to see this on a state level? So we're going to talk more about this, especially as it pertains to trust law here soon. But it says that he produces appropriate full powers, or B, it appears from the practice of states concerned or from other circumstances that their intention was to consider that person representing, the state for such purposes and to dispense with full powers. Okay, so this is a representative, right, on behalf of the state. Okay, hold on. Sorry about that. Not sure why I can't scroll down here. Maybe I'm not meant to. So number 2 says, in virtue of their functions and without having produced full powers, the following are considered as representing their state: head of state, heads of government. So it made a differentiation between heads of government, heads of state. We'll talk about that too. And minister of foreign affairs for the purpose of performing all acts relating to the conclusion of a treaty. B, heads of diplomatic missions for the purpose of adopting a text of a treaty between the accrediting state and the state which they are accrediting. And C, representatives accredited by states to an international conference or an international organization or one of its organs for the purpose of adopting the text of a treaty in that conference, organization, or organ. Okay, so this is all refreshing our memory from last time, so we're not going to stick too much on this. So we understand that full powers, right, is this representative, right, that gets down to the specifics, saying who has full powers in a state. Okay, these titles right here: heads of state, head of government. Why did it make a differentiation between the two? Why did it do that? Because the head of state, the state and the government, this is the physical concept of what the state is. This is what Moors are stuck on, as far as not understanding this grounded part and stuck on state of mind, type of concept, which is true. But it's almost like you never finished the sentence, because if you don't have this understanding, where can you actually, it's pretty much being of so spiritual good that you're not, what is it, being so spiritually inclined that you're of no earthly good type of thing, in which basically if you're not grounded enough to handle these matters, basically we got to handle it in the strict and logical sense right now. It's real narrow right now, right? We gotta come narrow minded, right? um this government aspect, the grounded aspect of this state concept. The state never dies. Moroccan Empire never died. Why? Because treaties were in place and we were always here to be able to reclaim. We just had a government that was never there. Right? So this state concept, government, right? Higher self, lower self, however you want to see it. But this is the actuality. This is what plugs and plays. This is what makes things go. All right, this is the wheel, right? State.
Point of privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just build about what you said, like how you pointed out, like just how the Empire of Morocco has always been here, but it's not been dormant, right? We just ain't had the right perspective to even see it. But it's a lot of things in international law that's like that. So there's like a perception that, you know, that's good to keep, that you can look out for. It's a close attention. With that, I yield.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to this next point here. Yeah, and that's an excellent point. And just to let you know, my daughter will be pulling up here soon, shortly, just a friendly reminder. All right, so Article 7, it just talks more about the basic principles of full powers. So let's briefly go over some of this. Article 7, paragraph 1, literature A, contains the basic rules that a person is considered as representing a state for the purpose of adopting or authenticating the text of a treaty, or for the purpose of expressing the consent of a state to be bound by treaty if he produces appropriate full powers. Right, this is the mature version of 2021. What is that? December 21st, 2021. Full powers. According to Article 2, Paragraph 1, Literature C, the Vienna Convention Law on Treaties full powers means a document emanating from a competent authority, right? It's a document emanating from a competent authority. We'll talk about competent. Competent means, right, of a state designating a person or persons to represent the state for these acts. In ancient times, the production of such a document was almost invariably requested, and it is still common in the conclusion of more formal types of treaty. The reference to the competent authorities leaves it to the internal law of each state to determine the person that issues the full powers. Usually, such documents emanate from the head of state or somebody whom he has delegated the necessary powers. Head of government or the foreign ministers and bear the official emblem and in some cases the seal of the country. So basically we just have here that a state can, okay, I didn't need that part. A state can have representatives, all which doesn't have to be a head of state. They can be diplomats on a mission who are not necessarily heads of state, right? But we're talking about the connection of a state at the end of the day. So a lot of Moors don't have people behind them. They don't have representation. Why? Because they don't have the full powers. As we're going to see, they're going to see that they're seen as crazy a lot of times. Why are other Moors seen as crazy? Because you don't have to do a lot. All you have to do is what COINTELPRO did, which was went in and did very, very not a lot, I'm sure. Changed up a word, put the word American right here, and there you go. And hide the rest. It's not a lot. It's a lot of times it's simple. It's right there in front of your face. Life is just so simple. So we about to get into more about full powers and competence, because the concept of state, the connection of a state, and if we had seen the video, we would have got into exactly what a state is. So my apologies for going over that video, that concept. because that would have made these hit a little bit harder. But as this reads here, it says limitations of the power to conclude treaties. The unassailable treaty-making capacity of states has to be distinct from possible limitations of the state's power, i.e. the competence. So the state's power is what they see as competence, right? So it's two things right here: the state and the power of it, right? The state itself, the person, and the power of that person, the competence, the intelligence of it. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about to conclude treaties, right? We're talking about documents basically. It says, whereas the term capacity denotes the legal ability to perform a potential scale of acts on the international plane. So can you perform, exude your power on international plane by way of a state, right? So the term power denotes the right to perform the act under international law. Power, i.e. authority to perform particular acts, is synonymous with competence. So when we're talking competence, remember words and what they say, words are spells, right? They diminish the Moors thinking into being so ununified, so disassembled, that when we say person, we thinking person as far as municipal law, person as far as doing business as an organization, right? Moors are not thinking person as far as state. They're not thinking unified, right? The competence is synonymous with the authority to perform particular acts on the international plane, right? The set of competences allocated to or remaining with the international person displays the scope of actions the international person is empowered to perform, right? This is grounded in our understanding. We had the divine side the whole time, right? We're talking about the basics here, right? The starting point of any sovereign state is that of unqualified capacities and unlimited competencies, i.e. powers, on the international plane. Even though Article 6 rules out any limitations of treaty-making capacity, the state's competence to conclude certain treaties can be subjected to limitations according to international law. So that kind of went into a different concept here, but we won't get into that right now. But we're building up to a few concepts, right? We understand what full powers is. We understand that in order to be a representative of a government, you must be a part of a state, right? We see that competence, we're talking about people are incompetent, we're talking about they're stateless, they're without a state. If they were competent, they would be a representative of a state with full powers, right? So this is what the spell is talking about here. This is it's all in law. It was all in your face. We've been saying it the whole time, right? But it means certain things on certain levels, which international law is the highest level. So why not know from the highest tier down as far as how the language may have changed? Why the language may have changed? Why are people stuck on nation and nationality and not statehood? Now, Wazir Ken, if you can take over for me right quick. Or Wazir Amir, if you'd like to speak on your document.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kendra.
I'll in case till he comes back, I'll start off reading right here. Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, uh 18 April 1961. The states parties to the present convention, recalling that peoples of all nations from ancient times have recognized the status of diplomatic agents, having in mind the purpose and principles of the Charter of the United Nations concerning the sovereign equality of states, the maintenance of international peace and security, and the promotion of friendly relations among nations, believing that an international convention on diplomatic intercourse, privileges, and immunities would contribute to the development of friendly relations among nations, irrespective of their differing constitutional and social systems. That was a big one right there. Realizing that the purpose of such privileges and immunities is not to benefit individuals, but let me see, you made me lose my I'm recalling. Okay, yeah, but to ensure the efficient performance of the functions of diplomatic missions as representing states, affirming that the rules of customary international law should continue to govern questions not expressly regulated by the provisions of the present convention, have agreed as follows. Article 1.
All right, real quick, we're gonna read through a few of these because I just have to grab my daughter right quick. uh, but we can read through a few of these as they even relate to the heads of state, right? The head of a mission, right? So people are talking about how they're doing they're diplomats, they're on a mission, right? They're not using this particular language, but they're talking as if they were uh diplomats or attached to an actual government or state, right? So these are different terminologies that relate to because it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be a government member or a government official, right? You can be a head of a mission who religious people do this all the time. They're not necessarily government officials, but they're heads of a mission, right? Um, so if you don't mind, we're going to come back to this um, after we tackle a few of these other documents, these other pictures here, because these are some of the basics, accessions, recognition, right? We're even going to talk about implied recognition if we get to it, right? As far as how to operate with the United States in their current state as we progress, right? Um, but since we man, sick, these videos don't work. But what I do want to call out is that I went to ChatGPT, right? And I just briefly went to this might not be brief, but talk about how uh, how Moors
We can't hear you, Wazir.
let me turn up. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is a very important concept because this is what transmutes our mentality into a more grand concept that emerges perfectly in the international law. A lot of Moors have different processes that relate to how to do business. Right? Why do Moors have different processes? Well, we're gonna find out that colonial states use these same interests.
So if you don't mind, I'm gonna have our Kills thing playing in the background. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
I think somebody got to be muted.
Oop.
Sound like you got yourself. Okay. So thank you. So even though ChatGPT is you know, some wouldn't say it's the most reliable source, but you can get a lot of common sense out of ChatGPT, right? Just like Google. So let's just talk about a few things. So I said, give examples of how a colonial state may trick people into utilizing municipal trusts law opposed to international law. So it's stated, it's important to note that promoting deceptive practices or encouraging unethical behavior is not something I endorse. Right? This is what ChatGPT said. However, I can provide a hypothetical, quote unquote, example to illustrate how a colonial state might manipulate circumstances to encourage the use of municipal trust law over international law. That's a reality for Moors, because when have Moors been focused on international law? Statehood, not until as of recently, till ANPAC and study came along, right? So it says, keep in mind that such actions will likely be unethical, and the promotion of transparency and adherence of international law is crucial for fostering global cooperation. Hypothetical scenario, quote unquote. Says that the colonial state, or wait, I skipped a line. Imagine a colonial state seeking to exploit resources within a territory that are subject to international regulations. The state might employ the following deceptive tactics. All right, excuse me. Ambiguous legal framework. The colonial state could intentionally create a legal framework that is vague or ambiguous regarding the application of international law to the exploitation of certain resources. This ambiguity may lead local businesses and individuals to default municipal trust law, thinking it provides a safer and more familiar legal ground. That's not the one I was talking about. It was number two. It's number two that where Moors are stuck in. It says the colonial government might engage in misinformation campaigns to convince the local population that international law is overly restrictive and detrimental to their interests. Our Moors talking about how the United Nations are Rothschilds and, using all these fear-mongering tactics about the Pope and all this type of stuff to not read the treaties and even talk about how treaties are expired and all this types of stuff, so it doesn't matter and all this. These are misinformation campaigns. What is the Moorish American concept? A misinformation campaign, right? By disseminating false information about the benefits of municipal trust law, the government could influence public opinion and push for its adoption. So when Moors are talking about, hey, we don't have human rights, but the best we can do is, tell them we're not corporations, even though it's only one state that you can abide by if you are not a part of Moroccan state, and that's the United States of America, if you're on this landmass. So they have internal policies and things that whatnot in which that when you debunk yourself down to a municipal status, acting as a government, we're gonna read furthermore how not only some of these tactics that Moors are stuck in are proven to be real life examples and not these hypothetical scenarios that ChatGPT is insisting that it is. But you'll see that Moorish Americans are actually part of the United States, right? So let's read more about these tactics and why Moors are stuck on municipal trust law and why we should stay on trust law. These are actual tactics. Economic incentives. The colonial state may offer economic incentives such as tax breaks or subsidies for business and individuals that choose to operate under municipal trust law rather than international law. Okay, do business as, right? Establish a trust so you can put it in and put the nationality card in your trust and your license plate in your trust. So they'll never mess with you. Okay, what's up? All while United States of America passport saying I'm free. It's like, no, that's not it. So it goes to say the financial motivation could sway actors to opt for the seemingly more advantaged local legal framework. So it said financial motivation could sway actors. Now, what's another word for basically what it's saying? It's talking about agents, right? Okay, so we got misinformation campaigns. We got questions. How are you getting through life, right? If these things are done, how are we getting through life, right? How are we getting through life? If things are proven to be of no success and they're coming for other people so fast, continuously, how are some of these Moorish American teachers getting through life? That's just a question that I ponder on sometimes. But so it goes to say complex legal procedures. Complex legal procedures. Now we know the United States is not simple. Why do Moorish Americans have so many processes? Complex legal procedures. Okay. Introducing complex and cumbersome procedures for complying with international law may discourage local entities from navigating the complexities. The colonial government could intentionally create bureaucratic hurdles, making municipal trust law appear more convenient and accessible. So it has discouraged local entities, right? People, I'm just this way ain't it. I'm gonna just go mess with this person. I'm gonna just go mess with this person. I'm gonna just go to RV Bay Publication. I'm gonna just go to Moorish American Constant. I'm gonna just go to this. Like, that's how it's been. There is no way in the United States. All they have is complex legal procedures. Sometimes the Moorish American card worked. Most times it didn't. Did that make it actually lawful? No. That just means that it was so complex that that policy enforcer didn't even know, and you just got lucky. Or it was just about how you set up your municipal trust law, right? That you was encouraged by the colonial system as to why you should set up your organization and your trust so you can exercise your nationality ID. right? So let's continue to measure out a few more tactics here. Um, so it says selective enforcement. The colonial government might inconsistently enforce international regulations, especially when it benefits local entities operating under municipal trust law. This selective enforcement could create a perception that international law regulations are not rigorously applied, fostering a preference for local legal mechanisms. So these are just five in which that in all truth there are way more. Um, so uh, this 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 alludes to the concept of trust law as that's the whole point of me bringing this up, because not only did this bring up other points, uh, but this hones down on where this was purposely done.
Point of interest.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna see what's up with her.
Are you saying that they're using like misdirection to keep us away from international laws and to keep us confused with um, municipal laws so that we won't understand and free ourselves with international law? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Knowing that even municipal law is a contradistinction to international law.
Mm-hmm.
And the colonizers know that. So they knew what to entice, being that municipal law, um, relating to trust law, right? On a municipal plane is a contradistinction to international law, but what we gotta more so realize is what AMPAC study sessions, AMPAG study sessions have been alluded to, especially as of recent. WRC, uh, you know, our state constitutions. That's what actually protects you, right? That's the person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the will. That's the when we found out that we pretty much are the last ones to do this, but the ones that's really gonna wake up the whole world. That we see that all these other state constitutions were right there in front of our face, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And even more in a strict sense, the wheel being the actual constitution, right? It's through the people, in which the people or that person, right? Because we got to come down to this Bendu point. The people is really this person, right? Why do I say that? Because the state, one element of the state is a population. So these people, right? This nation or this state, um, itself has a trust. So this trust, um, is again this Constitution. Why is it the Constitution? Because when you look in the Constitution, you see a national trust. You see a trust that says of this person saying, "Hey, I have an umbrella for all my people." Right? The Constitution is the first thing established, and in that Constitution, again, it's a national trust. It says, "Hey, I'm gonna protect all my people." And so, one of the first things you do, right, is not to go to the United States and, you know, whether you want a living trust or irrevocable trust, all that stuff, we're not talking about that. That's disseminated thinking. That's that's uh that's thinking from the crumb level, not from, you know, to be funny, but that's thinking from the individual level. That's not coming from the unified aspect. Because all you can do is what you can do. You're not coming from a balance of powers, a unified manner, right? So Moore's got to get out this trust law concept because that's one of the heavier blocks that once we understand how those concepts are contradistinction to what you should be actually thinking, right? We see the actual weight of it. It's a heavy block. So I wanted to talk about that, and also I found this interesting before I yield the floor to either the wise ears who would like to speak in regards to this Vienna Convention. I know Wazir Amir wanted to speak on that, but before we get to that, I wanted to show y'all what I typed in when I said I'm gonna type in Moorish American flag, and this would just further allude to just the basics, right? It's just the basics, just the obvious, right? Every state has a state flag except the United Nations if they're part of the United Nations. And you can obviously one state flag representing that state government, and it's just that simple. But here you see that when you type in American flag, that you get several different looking flags. You got this flag. These are not actual national flags. You got this flag. There's still some still claiming this flag. You got this flag right here. I don't even know if that's one. But point being is it's very obvious. It's really not hard to find out if somebody's a de jure state or not when you just stick with the basics. Right? Where's the state flag? Why does the Kingdom of Morocco wave this flag? Okay, that's their state flag. That's simple. Why does America wave their flag with that they call the banner? Oh, because that's the flag that they chose to represent the United States and what they use internationally. Flag. It's not because it's not the flag. So that's what's internationally recognized. That's because that's the flag. So if one of the wise ears want to take over, I'm gonna try to see what's up with my daughter's phone.
Okay. What I wanted to do was go over the contracting states. I think he's busy with his daughter right now. Kendon, did you want to go over this particular convention, or did you have something else you want to talk about?
Who's controlling the thing? Akil or someone else? You controlling it? Okay,
Achilles.
Akil controlling it. I mean, this here is fine. Akil kind of asked me that, but you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. I got an article. I'm gonna post this article, and we can kind of read it. And the point that I'm really bringing out this article,
Okay.
like I learn a lot because I mean I read all type of subjects or whatever, but I learned through their old documents, and I understand contract law, so I know who is who, and a lot of times it gives me like answers, like the rejoinder, of the United States and France. If you read that document, like I know a lot of people in these governments are wondering, like, well, what would the United States say? Like, what would be their national rationale? In that document, you'll get their rationale, and you'll hear what they gotta say. Exactly. And they say they don't got no problem doing any negotiating with Morocco or France, I think at that time. But this is another one, right? And this one, I want to ask this question. How many people we got on here? We got 26 people. Out of the 26 people on here, let me see. Okay, out of the 26 people on here, who knows who the C-24 is or the special committee? Okay, that's cool. I'm glad. That's the response I was looking for. And I'm gonna point this out to y'all. Like, as I start going to Jay's meeting, you know, Jay, he's way more erudite, so that's not like what I'm pointing out. But I understand, like how could he see it the way he see it? You know, like how does he have so much more depth, you know, perception about what's going on? And I never read case law or anything just up until that point in time. I started thinking it. But my point of saying is it led me to start finding out like these procedures and these processes so I can have an awareness of where we are in the process, whether anyone tells me or not. So this the first, you know, I ain't gonna say lesson, but you know, the first jewel I'm gonna give y'all that I learned, like you should like have an awareness of what's going on, you know, not probably just real deep, but on the surface level. And I'm pointing that out with the C-24. None of these territories are going to get the external sovereignty that we wish without going through this procedure. But no one on the call, they were like, I don't even know what the C-24 is or whatnot. But I'm finna get the document, but I just want to throw that out though. But it's a very good document. It's really not that long. But it's just speaking about, you know, how they discontinued the trusteeship council, how it turned into the C-24, you know, the special committee, and kind of breaks down a little bit, just a little bit about the process, you know, like what we going through and kind of what it looks like. But with that, I yield just a second. Okay, Kia, what you want me to send it to you, or how do I need to do that? Brother Amir, well, I guess we got to wait till he come back. I'm finna send it to him though. But it's a very good read though. It's very informational. It gives you a chance to kind of like also see like all the Europeans, like all of them wasn't with colonization. Like they wasn't trying to. Some people wasn't with it. Some were, some wasn't. And I learned that they didn't like to take us places. You know, and once you understand statehood, it really makes sense. Think about it. Why would you want to take a group of people somewhere when you got law, 3 branches of government, and you can go right there and you the resources and the people right there? But I read that though, they didn't like to really take us anywhere.
When you say take us, you talking about who?
Moors.
Okay.
Moors are just, I'm just really say people in general. Because the more deeper you get into statehood and understanding, I mean, you know, it's about that, but I mean, it's just really about the governance and the people, the citizens, the nationals, whichever, however you want to title, the living person. Oh, and it's another point too on the trust. Like, there's no commerce without the state. The state creates commerce, right? The state creates commerce. So when you have a state, you know, you can start tendering payments, start creating negotiable instruments that the bank, you know, can deal with and so forth on. But without a state, and just say if a person is using the trust in that territory, who are you helping? And I know it may sound abstract because it's like, well, we don't have certain things that they have, so you know we got to go this way. Yeah, that's a good perspective. But then it's another perspective. We never use Moroccan law going through various stages of advancement, and like the same signal or sign that, you know, Dempsey may get, Georgia may not get. But that don't mean that a certain thing wasn't paying attention to or wasn't recognized on a certain level.
Do anybody have any questions or anything? I'm just rambling off.
Yes, open forum.
Go ahead.
My apologies. I'm still trying to get her calm, so I'm gonna keep yielding the floor to y'all.
Hey,
Try to
Akil,
be here. Yeah.
hey, I got a document. I'm gonna send you this document and put it up, and I'll just start reading it, and then when you come back, you can continue.
Okay.
I'm gonna text it to you right now if I didn't
Well,
already.
I got it on my laptop, so you might want to put it in chat.
Okay, in the chat. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, this is yeah, that's it. And yeah, the title of this article is called Defending an Empire at the United Nations, Politics of International Colonial Oversight in the Era of Decolonization. Okay. Okay, I'll start off right here. Abstract. This article argues that although anti-colonial delegations to the 1945 San Francisco Conference did not succeed in bringing all colonial territories under the umbrella of international trusteeship, they go that word. Just a minute. Okay, a trusteeship. The threat of expanding international oversight shaped the relationship between colonial governments and international organizations in powerful ways by focusing on how the UN Special Committee, they go that word y'all was telling y'all about, on non-self-governed territories evolved as a de facto supervisory system for the dependent territories. This article considers the days that representatives at the United Nations define dependency and self-government. Y'all see right there, supervisory system for dependent territories, right? So we're trying to get our independence. We're not trying to be dependent anymore. This article considers the ways that representatives at the United Nations define dependency and self-government and explores the crusade that colonial governments led to justify imperialism in the post-World War. I don't know if, I mean, you know, a lot of y'all are, but Jay, he kind of hit me to imperialism. I didn't know. So, you know, it's just how they really use all our stuff for private gain when they're supposed to be, you know, for the people. But they, what's the word I'm looking for? They turn it into a business like they did. Okay, yeah. Through a consideration of
Quick point of
diplomatic
interest.
action. Go ahead.
I just want to speak while I got her calm right quick. Might not be too long. In regards to the trusteeship, you know, another reason why Moors are stuck on trust. Trusteeship, right? Trust territories, right? A trust. Okay, let's talk about the territory, the trust territory. This word trusteeship is the meaning of it means to mimic a government. A trusteeship has the ability to mimic a government, not be the government, mimic a government to assist in governing the people until self-determination is fully exercised as determined by the people in that territory. So trusteeship is in reference when we're talking about the WRC, right, and a trusteeship council, we're talking about the international version of trust law right there, right? that's another aspect of trust law, not in the aspect of individuals and the several other trusts that can be established, but the national trust, because what the national trust is like an umbrella for all its people, right? So when we're talking about the WRC, which is the face of um, the United States and Morocco forming, and a trusteeship council being an organ of the WRC or under it, right, to assist with the trust territories, right? That's the trust we should be focusing on, right? So this is some of the transmutation, the mental transmutation that needs to take place if Moors strive to be government officials, right? We're all organs of the state, right? So I just want to yield with that.
Okay, I'll continue. Through a consideration of the diplomatic actions of the France, Great Britain, and Belgium, I apologize. This article explores the ways that colonial empires jointly mobilized, I mean, mobilized to define colonialism at the level of the United Nations in the face of evolving supervisory mechanism at the United Nations. The French, British, and Belgium delegations joined forces in an attempt to expose some of the inherent contradictions in the UN policy towards dependent populations, and to make the case that subject populations, our word subject populations, living in independent territories often endure worse conditions than those living in formal overseas empires. You can continue to go up some more. Colonial questions are becoming more and more important in international affairs. In many cases, anti-colonialism is merely a cover for intense racial feelings, a color prejudice in reverse, which reflects the resentment of the darker peoples against the past domination of the world by European nations. In all cases, anti-colonialism is based on emotion rather than on reason, on misconceptions instead of a correct appraisal of the facts. Big Islam. In the introduction of
point of interest, right? Just to speak on some of these simple facts. Because if a Moor doesn't know, nobody knows, and that Moor has to know he's a Moor. So when we talk about these colonial questions, right, you realize certain words were being said. It was like they were hidden behind a seal this whole time. We were looking for the answers. Words such as decolonization, that wasn't popular in the Moorish American community. None of these spiritual communities, right? It went on to say that anti-colonialism is based off of on emotion rather than reason, right? So this is a actual study in which that when we talk about decolonization, right, we're invoking emotions, right, rather than reason from a lot of people. So this is just a pattern that the United States of America capitalized on. This is not just a thing. As we read, the several tactics they used, These people are not just about to lay down, right? This is about to be on every level. The the heaviest, craziest fight that you will ever fight in your life. The craziest chess game that you would ever play in your life. If you ever want to be better at chess, study how we gonna be moving once we go to the ICJ. You will get no better tactics. Matter of fact, the world's chess player might learn something. World's best chess player. So just think about some of these patterns that we can ourselves even declutter from. Because a lot of Moors coming to statehood can't wait to do something individual lifestyle, which will mean they can do something right now. It's not about the right now. Chess was never about the right now. Right?
Point of interest. About a week ago, I was at the grocery store and I ran into this European, and just someone I saw in the store. I thought I'd ask a question. I asked him, what would the United States look like during decolonization? And his response was, he had a blank face, and then he said, that would be the end of the world. And I'm looking at what it says here on the screen. It says, in all cases, colonialism is based on emotion rather than reason. Now, he tells me that it'd be the end of the world because he thinks that it would, his privileges as being a European would be over and the natives would be taken over. So he's not the only one would feel that way, but there's, that's a real crazy emotion to think that the whole world would be over because it's decolonized. Look what happened to the decolonized states of Africa. They didn't end the world. Matter of fact, some of the European countries still got more control over some of those countries in Africa. But the problem is he doesn't see the United States being decolonized in a more proactive way that would be better for everybody, because with the colonization of the United States, it's all based on capitalism, it seems like, and not helping each other. So I just wanted to share that with you, some of the different emotions that people have. I yield with that.
Okay, I'll continue, but also I want to build up off of last night. It was last night we read. I pointed out those those highlighting words, just that you'll pay attention to let you know that you're in a international jurisdiction. So I'll point some out as we continue to go. But we done seen some colonies, trusteeship, right? Trusteeship, you're not gonna see trusteeship. That terminology really nowhere in the domestic realm. Okay, I'll continue. In the introduction to his 1957 treaties in defense of colonies, Sir Alan Burns, the former British representative to the United Nations Trusteeship Council, lambasted the United Nations for the role he believed it played as a forum for international anti-colonial maneuverings. Burns, who had spent 42 years of his career in the British colonial service, claimed that much of the negative press that colonial empires had generated in the post-war period was a result of a lack of understanding about conditions in those territories and about the conditions in independent countries in the developing world. According to Burns, and I want to pause right there, right? So it says right there, territories and the conditions in independent countries and the developing world. What's the developing world? What they talking about the developing world? Can anybody answer that? Like the developing world will be like us, like we're developing.
Right.
Like,
I was just gonna say, like, would that be like the statehood that we're creating now, that we're developing now?
yes, ma'am.
Islam.
Okay, I'll continue. Where did I stop it? Okay, yeah, Burns, who had spent 42 years of his career in the British colonial service, claimed that much of the negative press that colonial empires had generated in the post-war period was a result of a lack of understanding about conditions in those territories and about the conditions in independent countries in the developing world. According to Burns, the subject people, right, living in the British Empire have greater liberty and better conditions of living than many of the inhabitants of independent countries. He argued that the serious criticism of colonialism come from the representatives of nations whose treatment of indigenous people is deplorable and whose governments are the most notorious for tyranny, inefficiency, or corruption. While Burns characterized, let me see. I'm sorry, I'm moving. Okay, yeah, that's character. How you characterize?
Characterize.
Okay, characterize himself as an avid supporter of many UN projects in the 1950s. He argued that when it came overseeing colonial governance, the organization had done much more harm than good. The UN, he believed, had become a privileged space for anti-colonial parties to express and agitate on behalf of fundamentally misinformed views. I'm gonna park right there. Like, man, you know, that's a really strong statement when I had read that, like, the organization had done much more harm than good. The UN, he believed, had become a privileged space for anti-colonial parties to express and agitate on behalf of fundamentally misinformed views. Like, they knew that a lot of people really didn't understand what was going on, and they took advantage of that. I'm gonna continue.
Point of interest.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out here, and after this article, we can get back to this Vienna Convention law and treaty, some of these other basic points too. But we can finish this out whenever whenever you finish. But I'd like to speak on this term subject, as this is a term that's familiar, that's common in treaties, right? More subject. Some people might have even read historical books about the French subjects, right? Just in relation to a person attached to a state government. But as we see that, quote unquote, right, the spells are real, right? How are the spells real? Well, at one time, more subject didn't denote a subjugated people who were actually subjugated at that time. If at that time, these more subjects were still able, independent, empire was live and well. So things change, right? Due to res judicata events, but it's up to us to put this term more subject in its correct status. Why is it not in its correct status? This more subject is not even seen as you. It's seen as a corporation, but they don't call it the more subject in their system. And by there, I mean the United States. They call it African American. They call it, all these other names, Black, right? So this subject, right? The subject people living in the British Empire have greater liberty and better conditions of living than many of the inhabitants of independent countries. Okay. But why in the France versus United States of America court case, more subjects are under the jurisdiction of the United States of America? So how do more subjects living? See, this term subject is taking a term is different. It's changing, right? We see there's different standpoints, different state governments having different policies, internal laws that govern their system. United States, how did they handle their internal laws? Well, they created municipal laws. They created the concept of trust law being the way to go. Did all these other states do that? Nope. You got 80 of them that decolonized. I don't think they did that. Not in order to decolonize, right? So not you see, you gotta be fluid with this term subject. See where the conversations around the world outside of treaties are going. Now, it's important to understand the treaties, but if you're striving to be a government official, you want to study the United Nations, study the conversations. Where's the measurements, as Wazir Amir alluded to when he spoke to the young man at the store about decolonizing America? Well, he said the whole world might end. That's a measurement, right? From the general public. The whole world knows that once we decolonize, that it's over with. They don't even know that the whole world is Moroccan Empire, but still they know that it's over with. It's a measurement stick, right? The energy signature, they call it. So we can continue on with this Wazir Mir. I yield.
That's
Okay.
Wazir Kendon.
Okay, yeah. And I also want to point out, like, you see how he was just able to identify how the subjects, right there, the British Empire had a greater liberty and better conditions of living than many of the inhabitants of independent countries, he argued. Like, the three branches of government, like, man, that's a very powerful thing, you know what I mean, to be able to inflict upon a people. That's why it gets so complex to where, like, I don't know if y'all ever seen the definition of a genocide. Like, if you look at that definition, like what it says, like it's real. I guess the word is intrinsic. You know what I'm saying? It's real, like a complex, like with mechanisms and, people really moving through legislation like they are. So it's a very powerful thing. For you can go anywhere around the world and do what they did. But I just want to point that out. I'm going to continue. Burns was not alone in his sketching indictment of the United Nations and the role that many anti-colonial delegations hoped it would play in participating the end. Let's see, okay, yeah, participating the end of colonialism in the post-war period. His book was reflective of borders, fear among colonial administrators that the UN would prove to be a key instigator of empire's undoing. Y'all caught that? Especially when coupled with the threat of nationalist movements when the colonies themselves, in a 1954 report, for example, one French colonial administrator wrote that the French now found themselves to be simultaneously in a position of judge, right, and defendant. I want to pause right there. How does that transpire? What has to take prior for a judge to be, right, a defendant, be a judge and defendant? And and this is what, like, let me know, right, before Jay ever said something, that I knew that something had to happen, like for decolonization really to be taking place. But what you just read, how a judge can become a defendant. So I knew, oh, okay. So when I get my status, right, oh, that's where act of genocide come from, right? And that's how you become a defendant, even though you were a judge or you were a prosecutor. But I just want to point that out. I'm gonna continue.
Quick point of interest, quick. I also want to point out the time frame. 1950, we talking about judge and defendant, right? We talking about this time frame 1954 as we get down here too, but this is during the time frame that France versus United States court case was about to occur. So when we're talking about France being this colonial administrator, right, who is the judge and the defendant. We talking about a state who was supposed to be doing one thing, looked like they turned out to be a colonizing state during that time period themselves. And now we get further to them being simultaneously in a position of judge and defendant before the United Nations Tribunal, right? That is the United Nations, etc. So just take all of that into concept as well. That this whole world knows it's over with. They just don't know where and how this is going to come about. But again, it's never simple, but it is very simple. When we just follow the instructions, put two and two together, and realize that this active adversarius is this is the master treaty for a reason. Why is the Treaty of Peace and Friendship not even the master treaty? Because the active adversaries gives the most updated reforms as far as independence, the integrity, etc. It has more dominion, more power, more. It reinstated what the Treaty of Peace and Friendship could have stated. So we're talking about something at this time in 1906 of a higher dominion, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So not a higher dominion as if it was a treaty is a treaty, but something that has more power, right? So as far as decolonization, so I'll yield with that.
I want to build on that. The act of Algeciras gives the Moors back the empire, back control of the empire, which controls the enterprise, the great enterprise, which is the United States and others. So that's what's really important. I see when I read the act of Algeciras, it gives us back control of the empire. I yield on that.
Okay, I'll continue. And I also want to point out, I spoke about, like that unseen, like world, right? The things to look out for. When I spoke about how the Empire of Morocco has been here, but we just hadn't able to recognize it. And that's the same thing that it just happened with the judge and the defendant. Like it's written in code, but that's how a lot of international law is interpreted. But I'll continue. In the questions of Aborigines before the United Nations, the Belgium thesis Van Langhove accused the United Nations of unjustly criticizing the treatment of dependent peoples in non-self-governing colonial territories while exempting independent countries from the same level of security. Such of the disparagement but forth by colonial governments among to little more than off-color remarks, like Burns' assertion that petition writing to the Trusteeship Council and become a national sport in tropical Africa. Some of their criticism, however, pointed to a very real shortcomings in the UN apparatus for protecting dependent peoples living in territories not under colonial rule. Yeah, and you see how they petitioning, right? And that's what I was going back to as we get more in this document. You're gonna be able to see how Burns' assertion that the petition right into the Trusteeship Council. So, some of the newly formed states, now you see where the whole concept of you petition the Trusteeship Council comes from. But I'll continue. You can go up.
what that word right to apparatus. Go back to that word apparatus. What is the definition? Can you look the definition up?
It's like a tool.
Right. Said technical equipment or machinery needed for a particular activity or purpose. The complex structure of a particular organization or system, a collection of notes, various readings, and other matters accompanying a printed text. Examples. You see the apparatus of the government. One thing about the books apparatus does. Okay. So let me see. I'll go with the complex structure and technical equipment. Okay, go back to it. Complex structure and technical equipment. Okay, go back and see the word. Okay, yeah. So the complex structure. Okay, machine. Okay, yeah. So I'll go with the complex structure. So the shortcomings in the United Nations, complex structure for protecting dependent peoples living in territories under colonial rule. This article explores the narrow path that European empires navigated between a governing commitment to the internationalism in the post-1940 period and an attempt to maintain colonial autonomy in the face of evolving supervision by the United Nations and the broad global community. It explores the fears and uncertainties surrounding the role that the United Nations will come to play in the unrevealing of the European colonial empires and argues that the Special Committee serves as a privileged forum for both colonial and anti-colonial delegations to the UN to engage in a 15-year battle over who had the right to speak on behalf of colonial populations on the international stage. And amongst inter alia, like that's a strong point. The more you you study international law and you see like what they were arguing over and how they were arguing, and how like I was reading a book, The 10 Years of Secret Diplomacy, but in that book they speak, about these certain countries who violated these treaties, and how they violated them, and how they find merit and who was wrong. Uh, Man, it gets real deep. But I just wanted to say that, but I'm gonna continue. Okay. While the earliest studies of decolonization centered on the role that nationalist movements within colonial territories played in toppling imperial rule, more recent scholarship has attempted to look beyond the binary of colonial metropole to ground the end of empire in the broader history of internationalism and international institutions in the 20th century. You can go up a little bit, brother. Much of this recent scholarship has focused on the way that the international community dealt with the League of Nations mandates, and later the UN Trust territories, the colonies that were inherited from the vanquished nations in the First and Second World Wars, works by historians such as Susan Parenting and Meredith Teresa, among others, trace the slow evolution of international colonial oversight for this select set of colonial territories. In her recent global history of the League of Nations, permanent mandates, commissions, Penderson argues that the PMC served as an important international forum for discussion about the rights and responsibilities of European governments, vice versa, their colonial populations. But as Paris explains, the internationalization of colonialism did not necessarily indicate a growing commitment to anti-imperialism. Rather, many representatives to the PMC advocated on behalf of empire
rather than on behalf of the rights of local populations. Wow. While the mandates commissions did provide an avenue of communication between the league and people living under colonial rule. You can go up a little bit, brother. Yeah, okay. See, I lost my spot. Let me see. I'll just start right there. The mandated territories, the benefits that this form conferred were tenuous at best. Sometimes the mandates, let me see, hold up, because I got mine kind of big so I can see. Okay, I'm gonna start at behalf. I apologize, you all. Uh, behalf of the rights of the local populations, while the mandates commissions did provide an avenue of communication between the league and the people living under colonial rule in the mandated territories, the benefits that this form conferred were tenuous at best. Sometimes the mandate systems, Parents argues, actually made colonial rule worse. Mark Mazur, in his work on the United Nations and colonialism, similarly warns against reading too much optimism back into the potential of the UN to serve as an advocate for the world's most oppressed and downtrodden. Through his exploration of the role that characters like South African statesmen Jan Smuts played in the creation of the UN, Mansour aims to show the ways that many people in the post-war era saw the UN like the League as a way to preserve empire, not to dismantle it. And anytime anyone has any questions or anything, comments, like, man, you could just butt in and I'm gonna stop. But if certain
Point of interest. I just want to shift gears back to this Vienna Convention law on treaties.
Okay.
And I wish these videos would play, but it might be the way I'm honestly screen sharing here. But I won't mess with that now. Now, honestly, I want to see if this will play. Let me know if y'all can hear this. Let's just try it again.
Islam, we can't hear it, or I can't hear it.
Yeah,
No,
we
I can't hear it either.
can hear.
All right. Well, we're gonna concentrate on that then. But just to break down some of these other basics, as we switch gears here, you spoke a little bit on just a few general topics as far as what's the general public thinking about the United Nations. Right, we went over how trust law, um, in the form of municipal law, or that independent state in its policies and internal law, can be used as a tactic to sway people away from international law. Right? Again, how do we further see this? Well, people are selling packages, living fine, no hope in unifying, right? All these ways in which they're encouraging their independent lifestyle, right? And how the United States encourages other misinformation groups. Right? How is within if the United States themselves doesn't call themselves Moorish Americans? Well, they allow certain tactics and windows to remain open to allow people to keep beating that drum. I mean, there's been a lot of abnormal situations when it comes to some of these Moorish American cases, right? But when we're talking about looking at it from the top down, in the former United States, and their top version is to keep colonizing by way of these tactics that we're explaining right now, we see that one of their highest techniques would be to allow the Moorish Americans to keep beating that drum, even in the most outlandish situations. What does that do? It draws in hope, doesn't it? Draws in something went right. See, somebody's right about something, even though somebody may have went through the most. This is chess, right? This is chess. So let's just read a little bit here. Now, excuse me.
What about Article 12?
Yeah, I was taking a sip of water. But yeah, I'll start off and read here if you don't mind. Here, Wazir Kenton. I'll read while I got the time.
Okay, that's
so
fine.
thank you. So we see in Article 12 of this Vienna Convention law on treaties. Right, we sticking to the basics here. The consent of a state to be bound by a treaty, which is Article 12, right? The consent of a state to be bound by a treaty is expressed by signature of its representatives when, now hold on. The consent of a state to be bound by a treaty is expressed by signature, right? So a lot of people are not clear as far as what a state is. Some people believe they're organizations because they're wrote a letter to the United Nations that they're recognized as a state somehow, and et cetera, because they have a state of mind and all this type of stuff. Some people believe that the Indians, Native Americans, quote unquote, or whatever, what have you, are a sovereign state. Some say the Moorish Science Temple America is a state, right? But when we talk about the specific verbiage, one, not only are they not a state, but when we talk about the specific verbiage, talking about, okay, a signature, talking about signatures, right? We're talking about signatures by who? People who have full powers, the representatives, right? The officials. Well, Moorish Science Temple America is a state, right? It's a state, should be able to be bound by a treaty, right? And by way of proof of signatures. We got to question where was the signature in the Constitution, the divine and national Constitution, right? For the Moorish Science Temple America. Where was that signature? Where was Noble Ali's signature? Where was the signature of the representatives of that state? Where were the signatures? Isn't that one example that Moorish Americans utilize to say, hey, the United States Constitution was de facto or de jure based off of these signatures? So although we're talking about treaties, these emanating documents need signatures. If in fact it is an emanating document from the state, right? Regardless, even constitutions, or excuse me, organizations can have constitutions, right? You got the highways and byways similar to the state laws and bylaws. Right? Organizations can mimic states, but are they states? No. Or even a church can have trustees. Church can have a congregation, electoral congregation event take place in which they can vote for who the trustee is, right? That can happen for a normal church. They set up themselves a certain way. And so when we say the Moore Science Temple America is a religious organization, what are we saying here? It's the same thing. So it's a church or state, no? Right? Churches don't have state constitutions with signatures to be bound by treaties. So we're talking signatures, right? States, we're talking about basic proof. Talking about things that we missed out on as we was trying to find our solutions. So it says unilaterally established intention. Finally, Article 12, Paragraph 1, Literature C, refers to the case where the intention of a state to be bound by signature emanates from the full powers or was expressed during negotiations. In contrast, two previous cases, this provision does not relate to the common will of the negotiation states. Common will. Common will. What's the common will of the negotiating states? Well, when we talk about, again, the will, right? In a literal sense, and in law, we're talking about trust, right? On what standpoint? The state level. And so what's the trust on the state level? The national trust, all nationals. That's for everybody. What's the will on the state level? At the Constitution. What is the negotiating, when the negotiating states came together and they formed the United Nations Charter, right, which is seen as a treaty in international law. Right, these negotiating states creating emanating documents to go forth according to international law and its standards, top tier standards, in which that gives the people, allows the people to continue. And when we talking about COINTELPRO, we talking about a group of people, for one, that, and I know I just switched gears real quick, real fast, but we talking about a group of people that all you had to do was make state of mind type of talk and make trust law and will in relation to chakras, chakra wheels, things of this type of thing. And I mean, it's easy to, bring logic into anything, but it doesn't take much, because how many times have we read the word state when you were Moorish American? I read it thousands of times, hundreds, if I really want to be truthful. But how hard was it for us to just go to Black's Law Dictionary and just say, hey, state means the actual government? And I've been saying state all in my doc. I've been saying state, but we in a rush. It's a lot of pain points. Everybody just want to get something done, get to the next point. They're trying to not pay this next bill, right? Head barely above water, looking for the right now. Well, when you're looking for the right now, it's easy to make a person overlook something and throw a pebble this way, and next thing you know, a whole beach took you a so just to point out some of the basics, right? These are just some of the basic signatures, emanating documents. How else, and I yield the floor when I ask this question, what are some other ways to determine the actuality, the reality, the de jure-ness of a state? How will we know? What are some things that we can call out? Say, hey, this is how we know this is a state.
They have a constitution.
Constitution. Not a constitution, the state
Seal.
constitution, right?
DOAO.
You say what now?
Delegation of authority order.
Okay, when you say delegation of authority order, what do you mean in terms of international law? Because when we say delegation of authority order, we're talking about delegation from who? You're talking about representative, right? We're talking about from a state. So when we say delegation of authority order, what can you, I should say, be more specific on that before I expand on that?
Islam. Well, delegation coming from, a de jure state, as long as the state come back to a de jure, which is a modern Moroccan state, then if they can present that any identification like that, then yes, it's de jure, correct?
Yeah, I thought I was on mute. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. In which that I was really looking to be more specific in regards to international law, in which you were.
Yeah.
But to be more to the point, if you will, because even the Moorish Americans will get caught up in the term delegation of authority, right? Because we understand that the state constitution is our authority, in which that us as representatives, delegates, that's where we get our authority from, the state constitution. So when we say delegation of authority order, some more are stuck on the 101s, right? So that's I was really kind of looking for a more encompassing answer, but the state constitution, right, being a delegation of authority, a standpoint of authority in which again it gives us that's what confers us the nationality. Now, that's what allow us to keep going basically. Now, if we fell off the bike because government failed, and the state constitution allows us to confer nationality, right? When you look up what confers nationality, a state confers nationality, a government confers nationality, right? That's who confers it, that's who confirms it, that's who validates it, right? It's the state that grants nationality. So what are we talking about? The continuation. What are we talking about? The will. What are we talking about here in actual law? The will. What are we talking about? Trust law. Right? We fail at one point. What did it take? A state constitution. So we keep going. Okay, what's also in that state constitution, the national trust? Okay, we talking about trust law and wills on the state level. How else do we know this? We got diplomatic immunities, privileges and immunities in which you're protected, right? So this is how again we up our standpoint in regards to trust law in this wheel, right? We fell off this bike, quote unquote. What allowed us to keep going? Okay, well, the state constitution, right? As Wazir Amir alluded to. I just like to yield the floor to the question again. If anybody would like to bring up any other points and how we can blatantly call out if somebody is an actual state government or not, right? What are some of the other basic points that we can clearly, recognize, measure out if it's a state government?
A Declaration of Independence. What's the head of state name? What's the head quasi name? Well, what are your dominions? Like, we know which will be in your constitution. Like those paramount things that only a person affiliated to the state can answer. And I'm gonna point this out too, y'all. Another one of them abstract thoughts. So, you know how we always thought about the question? Well, like, how do they know when they question you? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a Moorish American, or you telling the truth. And it's a case I posted on my page. But me being stopped a couple of times, and I talked to them, and I'm paying attention to like what they're telling them and what the truth is. They know about what they're telling them. You know what I mean? Or just looking at their license plate. When we first got our place, I was telling our officials, they was like, well, how do they know? It's symbolism. You know what I mean? Okay, we have a Moorish American. You saying you're not, like we say you're American, but then you have a United States seal on your license plate, and then you have a Moorish flag, then you talking about diplomat. Like they understand. Just like I can see it like that. But I just point that out. Go ahead, Akil.
It's I'm not sure why I'm not sure why I keep thinking that. Um, so another, just before I bring this up, another indication that your estate is a public inauguration, right? International law deals with public law, meaning that the public should know what's going on. I mean, if you say that your state government should have no problem showing the world, just like all other state governments, saying that these are the representatives, the officials of our state. Right? You have a state flag. Just like all the other states who are part of the United Nations and states who aren't even a part of the United Nations, right, have state flags. We see at the United Nations, all the state flags lined up, right? But where's the Moorish American flag? This is why do we keep bringing Moorish American up?
I don't know. Getting tired of them.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's the same exact concept for the quote unquote black people who are having an identity crisis between Black American, American Indian, American Moor, Indian American, whatever, African American. It's the same exact concepts, right? Except the Moorish American concept is the closest window to the truth. Why? Well, this term Moor kind of it kind of up the stakes, right? They was trying to hide that word more a long time. They said, we cool with African American, cool with American Indian, we cool with all that other stuff, but MOOR in there. Things getting a little closer to home. Right? So this Moorish American concept is the reason why pretty much in a sense, in general scope, we're talking to all people, and they're not even just people who consider themselves Moorish Americans. So as if we had shown these videos that I'll get to work next time. If we would have shown these videos, we would have clearly seen that 13 colonies, right? The people from Europe, right? Who were the 13 colonies? They were dark-skinned people from Europe. Where else is Europe? Spain. Oh, the Moors in Spain. They love telling that story, right? The European Moors. How many Moors uplift that narrative? Of course, they want us to tell that narrative. Talking about the Europeans, same place 13 colonies came from. Right? Let's learn about the European Moors again. So the wool was pulled over our eyes as soon as we put it in another way, simple and plain. exactly what I said. It's always been that way. But how many times do we always go find the Moors in Spain information, try to prove our points? Not putting two and two together, saying, wait. Talking about the same European, the same blood, the same group. They got us colonized. We talking about same. Okay. So let's continue this.
Why is it for you? Or you could tell you when I just screenshotted what I was just pointing out. And if you read, right, and y'all, everybody on here pretty much understand the responses of if an agency was to ask you, particular questions. Look how he's responding and think what the answer to the question is.
In other words, transmutation, right? Mental transmutation. Right? None of these perceptions come overnight. This contemplation is chess, right? But as we continue here, we see this term accession, right? This term accession, Article 15. It's an element of Article 15 in the Vienna Convention, right? So this, by the way, this is a commentary we're reading from. This book is a commentary, or it goes further explanation about the Vienna Convention law and treaties, right? So it says, according to Article 2, paragraph 1, literature B, fourth alternative, accession means the international act so named whereby a state establishes on an international plane its consent
You probably need to meet somebody, kid.
Here's something. That. So we got consent to be bound to a treaty, right? So accession is about the consent to be bound to a treaty. So everybody who's talking about exercising the treaty, we're getting down to the very exact steps, right? In a normal conversation, somebody who should be familiar on an international plane as far as how instructions go. Somebody say, okay, they exercising the treaty. Okay, what steps did you take? You and your state, right? What are the basic steps to bind to a treaty? You got to bind a seed to a treaty before you use it. There's no way you can use a treaty without acceding to it. You got to accede to it. So, and the concept of self-executing will even come up, but I don't want to bring up too many points right now. So we have accession, meaning the consent to be bound by a treaty, right? It said, it hereby resembles ratification, acceptance, or approval as it is a unilateral act under international law. The instrument of accession can take different forms. It is usually a document so entitled and signed by a high representative of a state. The use of state emblems or other signs of solemnity, I can't say that word, solemnity is optional. Accession is completed when the instrument of accession is exchanged between the contracting states, deposited with the depository, or notified to the contracting states. Okay, so it's a lot of different ways that accession could occur, right? But how do we narrow down how we need to go about it? Okay, well, we got treaties. It says if you want to be a Moroccan state, this is how you need to move, right? It says that such and such, well, in the active voucher series, right? We have basically have, if first and foremost was Tangier being the primary source of international law, then the League of Nations, then the United Nations, right? But this is all according to treaty. So when Moors say that they have established a state, okay, where did you deposit it? It's according to treaties. It doesn't say the United States Department of State will get the stamp approved, get it sent back. Now you solidify as a state. No, we don't say nothing about United States. Right, we getting down to the strict instructions. This is irrefutable, unwavering. Right. This is the breakdown of the law that governs all treaties. So the law that governs all treaties said that you must follow the treaty, what our treaty said. Well, when we talk about recognition here, some people say, well, recognition, you look for permission. Right? You looking for somebody to they say, recognition, you waiting for a handout. Okay, maybe I'm not meant to that type of work. Maybe the bottom part. So recognition, and it's obviously starting off in the middle of a sentence here. But it says basically, let's make this make sense before we read it. Treaties and agreements, right? Same yet different. Just like the mind and breath, right? Some say the breath being the mind and action, right? We're not going to go into meditation and what right now, but talking about treaties and agreements, right? Now, it's a difference between charters and treaties, right? Charters come from states, they're issued by sovereign states. But in international law, when we look at the United Nations Charter, we see that it's a treaty, right? So we have to look how, on a municipal level, how it's contradistinctive to the international level. If you try to say, hey, what this charter, this Moorish Science Temple, this charter that we have, it's all we need. And you're studying United Nations Charter, look at you. We got to understand the spells, quote unquote, right? What changed? What transpired? What happened? How did international law grow? Well, it went from an empire, right, being ran off of religion, right? Statehood was not the same as it is today. But how did statehood come about? Well, we conquered everybody else, subdued everybody else. Well, why was that going on? Because even the Sultan was a colonizer. How else did we get naturalized as British, American?
It's not showing anything. You definitely have to see it.
Say what now? Somebody has something to say? Something to bring to the table? I'm assuming somebody accidentally unmuted themselves. But where Moors are stuck at is is a time frame that was perfect for the colonizers to capitalize on for Moors to be stuck at mentally. Because statehood was being introduced in a way that specified the instructions. And as they were being specified, the colonizers, who were the colonizers? Okay. Not only is it the United States of America, right? But how did this landmass that people call America, that jurisdiction, people call America, how did that end up in the hands of somebody outside of that jurisdiction, outside of those boundaries? How did somebody in Africa, yeah,
The Treaty of Peace and Friendship, the contract that gave them the right to come here?
but yeah, as far as the Americans, and I'm talking further back, I'm talking, how did this people on this landmass, if this is the Moroccan Empire, right? They don't refer to this landmass as Morocco when we go to Google. They say, hey, the Moors in Spain, right? As if that's Morocco and not this landmass. But I'm referring to back to a more ancient time where a lot of Moors are stuck at. How did a man or a group of men, a line of men, sultans, who are in what we consider Africa, how did a sultan end up in Africa controlling this landmass over here, knowing that this is the central point in law known as Morocco, right? We know what that story over there in Africa has a lot to do with the Arabs, right? We have a line of history between what we know as the Berbers and the Arabs. We have a line of history saying, hey, the Moors were in Spain in 1711. Then some say the First Republic was in Hanno's time. Okay, well, you got the Romans, same areas going back and forth supposedly, right? Okay, the same thing pretty much happened in their own ways. But if you pay attention, we see that the Arabization, if you will, came in way before 1711. It came in even before Hanno's time, Hanno Bay, talking about they always show with the elephant, right? In Carthage.
You're referring to 7-Eleven, correct?
I'm referring to not only 7-Eleven, but I'm talking about Hanno's time. We're talking about what they say 400 BC. It's the 200 BC time frame, the Punic Wars, and all that, in which the Romans invaded. We talking about the Europeans, the European Moors, right? With the quote unquote Moroccan Empire. Well, they keep talking like that area is just the Moroccan Empire, like the Kingdom of Morocco area is just the Moroccan Empire, and they keep leaving out this landmass. Every single time they talk about the Moroccan Empire. Hanno's time, right? The 7-11 situation, they left out this landmass, act like it's just America. It was always America. This wasn't the land of milk and honey that all other places outside of this relied on. But yet it's being
Trade
left out.
routes. It was a trade route, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It was many things.
Right.
It was many things. But my point is that, and I know I kind of went everywhere, is that, the wool is getting pulled over our eyes. And we see how even I myself am guilty of being so easily enticed by this interesting concept of Moors and how we're Moroccans at truth. But due to pain points, you know, in the right now situation, you know, thinking that all these spiritual texts and historical texts influencing the concept of, oh, it's going to be like a thief in the night, you thinking it's something way outside of other than law, international law, you are highly mistaken. This is where it starts. This is where it is. There is nothing more divine than this. And talk about the pyramids and dimensions and all. Look, you ain't ever gonna get access to the truth unless you come through this way. This is the Bendu point. There is no other way. Everybody else who wants access to all those cool things, they gotta wait until the Moroccan states do what they do. Period.
Good point. I want to point out to that. That's another one of those things like the Empire of Morocco. Like that's what he said. You say everybody else just lost. Like they posting every day about the magical this. Go back to this. And man, it don't got nothing to do with law. You'll never get to put your hands on it if you don't go through some type of Moroccan state, you know what I'm saying, with some type of authority. You just gonna be reading in the book like you've been doing for all these years. But that I yield.
So recognition, as we continue to understand this, just to get back to point, it says, in addition, international practice strongly distinguishes between largely recognized states and collectively non-recognized entities. In former,
Sorry.
Islam, Chairman.
I'm just getting off my government meeting, man. It starts at 7, man. That's why I wasn't on here earlier. But you know, I got to be on here to support the good brothers in the WRC and all the attendees. I love y'all. Peace and love. I'm gonna go on mute.
Islam. I appreciate
Islam. Islam. Love you too.
Islam.
Yeah, peace and love, Mo.
Islam.
So it goes to say, in the former case, the statehood of a largely recognized state and therefore its inherent treaty-making capacity, which is in Article 6, explained in Article 6, is legally not disputable. So we're talking about recognition of a state, right? Especially based on its treaty-making capacity, is legally not disputable. Okay, so what treaty recognizes Moroccan states? The Act of Algeciras. Well, how do we know that it recognizes Moroccan states? Article 121, right? It says all states shall have a state constitution. Okay, so this Moroccan treaty saying that all states, specifically, obviously Moroccan states, must have a state constitution. So we got a treaty that says Moroccan states, and who signed on? Well, there's several signatory powers. So guess who recognized Moroccan states before anybody was born? Any of us was born. Right?
European powers.
European powers. So when we talk about not reinventing the wheel, all we had to do was establish a state constitution. Everything else was done. Right? The national trust. We're talking about a lot of Moors again, like to talk trust and will. Right? In the state constitution, where we got a national trust. Well, we fell off our bike. What do we need to keep going? The state constitution. That's the will. Okay, we keep going. Got the national trust. Protecting
That
the
was a good one.
diplomats. Seriously, it's literally like that. You know, and then you got COINTELPRO coming in,
right.
coming in and, you know, I don't know exactly what COINTELPRO did, but what could they have done? Maybe change WHEEL from WILL to WHEEL. Now we talking about car wheels. Trying to decipher what wheel we talking about. It's silly things. Like, It's just silly things. It possibly could have happened, but let's just call out the basics, right? We're talking about the basics. Recognition, state recognition, right, is legally not disputable. So are the Moroccan states Moroccan states? Yes, how do they know? State constitutions, we already been recognized, et cetera, et cetera. Let's keep it going. He says the bilateral treaty relations with the state that constantly refuses formal recognition is nonetheless governed by international law. Agreements between states and collectively non-recognized regimes are rare. Okay, that's rare. But who's collectively a non-recognized regime? I want to ask that to the floor. Who's collectively, or what could possibly be a non-recognized regime?
That's a good question, Wazir.
Buffalo Numb.
No
People
doubt. No doubt.
claiming more than one jurisdiction.
I'm stuck on that Unami Buffalo Nation comment because that's true.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And there's another one too. There's another political group forming who's a non-recognized regime. Y'all remember that group? The other group.
The other Canadian group?
Yeah, remember there was the guy with the what's his name? Hegloy or whatever his name was?
Yeah. And that's a group that a lot of Moors might not be familiar with. But yeah, that's another just for the public record, another non-recognized regime. In which that where does recognition come in from? Now, not only can it possibly come from these treaties that already obviously say were recognized by other states as Moroccan states, right? But it also comes by way of the third state parties, i.e. the Moroccan states being established and already established, who recognize each other. And who do we recognize? People who want to actually follow instructions according to international law, stick with the strict sense. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Is get to exactly what needs to be done and get it going. That's who we recognize. People who want to comply with international law. All reasons why the two former groups, those two other groups that we mentioned, are not recognized. So who else is not recognized? Or I say not going to be recognized by Moroccan states. Who else will not be recognized by the Moroccan states as a state government?
USAR.
USAR, another group. That's definitely another group.
They're popping up everywhere.
And more so, what I want to get to, that when we talking about again the United States, right? A United States corporation, United States of America, which one is it? Type of thing. We sticking to the contracts. The contracts say United States of America. That's the exact verbiage. So even the last point, right? You saw United States of America Republic. You don't say United States of America Republic on these contracts, these treaties. And the closest thing to that term are who we know as the colonizers. Regardless if it's Republic, or Democrat. Not a letter less, not a letter more. United States of America. That's the name of the contract. It ain't gonna be the United Nations, right? That's not a state government. They admit that. They know international law. It's not gonna be the Morris Temple of America. Who continuously are calling themselves a state, all while saying, okay, it's a religious organization, incorporated. Is that a state? It's a corporation. And we can obviously ask, is a corporation a state? Well, I don't know. We got McDonald's right here. We got rallies next door. Are those states? Just make it simple. Right. So just to point out how silly, the spiritual concepts may be. Let's just think about it. Everybody's a state because they got a state of mind and whatnot. I'm talking about corporations, your corps and all this type of stuff. Your state, you yourself individually. When we break it down, well, okay, a person, that's what you are. That's what this rally situation and McDonald's situation are. Their state of mind. Rally's got a state of mind. That sounds silly. Because when you try to stick spiritual, you get everywhere. You get real chaotic. That's what spirituality is. This is quote unquote chaos energy. You can't stick to the strict sense. It's hard to. But it's a time and place for everything. Stick to the strict sense of the law, the exact letters we see in front of our faces, right? It's on treaties. So it goes to say reasons for an almost collective non-recognition policy are often rooted in birth defects, quote unquote, or of the respective regime. Example, an unconstitutional secession unsupported by international law. Unconstitutional secession unsupported by international law. The lack of independence, i.e. subjugated peoples, colonized peoples, or the violation of fundamental international norms. Who are these? What kind of attributes are describing what kind of groups? These are attributes describing what kind of groups? Moorish Americans. Lack of independence, violation of fundamental international norms, unconstitutional, they want United States Constitution, unconstitutional secession, unsupported by international law. Well, if you go try to support United States Constitution, say you want independence, as a colonized person, they're gonna say, okay, when we look back at history, yeah, we got history books galore that says 13 colonies were the colonizers, but who are you saying you are? Something not making sense. So, I just want to break some of these points down, as we come to a closing here. It's been over 2 hours here. We went over quite a few images. But first, before I actually close out or yield the floor to any questions, I want to show some of these images in relation to any Moors in these jurisdictions, Maru State Republic, claiming the territory commonly known as Indiana. If anybody is in this territory looking to be an active Moor, meaning you're looking to study international law, it's only a handful of people selected to do this, right? So if you're hearing this, I hope that it's you that I'm talking to who has the competence, the confidence, and the willingness to comply with international law, not my personal opinion. I'm talking about treaties that came before all of us, right? I'm talking to those Moors who are ready to be active as government officials and not passive as nationals who are just waiting, right? So I'll just go through several of these flyers for the promotion of statehood for the several states here with these flyers. I know not every state is necessarily looking to onboard certain people, as each state is different. All states in due time will need to be furnished to a much more friendly fashion, a furnished fashion. So you can contact Maru Moxon at gmail.com if you're interested, right? Send your name and phone number and your reason for contacting. We're gonna go over to MTs. Excuse me for
Point of
not having
interest,
the proper
Akil.
connection.
Of interest,
Yeah,
Akil. Document that you had pulled up when I first joined. What document was that?
that was it was a commentary for the Vienna Convention long treaties.
Mm.
It
Okay,
was a
okay.
commentary.
Yeah. The little bit that I read, man, that was some powerful information. Excellent find, good brother. That's all I wanted to say. I yield.
Yeah, Islam. That was a book that I came across when I first came into statehood. I didn't know half of what I was reading. I didn't understand half what I was reading. I thought about it. Said, I got to go back to that one. It's fire. But so this
Can
is
you send that? Can you send it to me, brother?
yeah, for sure.
I might have to jump on that one for one of these classes. I yield.
Yeah, I got you. So this is DMT's flyer for the promotion of statehood, right? Where you can do the same, send your name, phone number. Here's the website, and here's the email that you can send it to, dmt.gov@gmail.com, right? State your name and the phone number, reason for contact. And we have, last but not least, a new Mecca. And I updated it so it looks extra down here. So they have the most updated version. But I mentioned active Moors and not passive Moors, right? Just to be that much more clear. We need active Moors, right? We need administration done. And administration is not so high tech as of right now. Excuse me. But nonetheless, it's the administration needed to get to push forward. So that's what we mean by active, being ready to produce documents based off of the thoughts that you can um, um, put in the state, and we all come together, right? Add your thoughts here, add these thoughts here, and now we have emanating documents with the assistance of you, whoever's reading this, hearing this, as the future official, right? So you can send your information to info@ampnm.gov.org to contact New Mecca, which is more state government that's reclaiming the Oregon territory, that has reclaimed the Oregon territory, right?
Thank you for
So
that, Wazzy.
yeah, no problem.
Where
So I
mine at,
yield.
man? Where mine at, man?
I'm
No,
gonna
I'm
still
just playing.
make. I'm gonna make something for everybody. Y'all got
Oh, man, we good.
y'all got the rest of
We
the
got
empire.
1,000. We got 1,000 people, man. We good, man. I was just playing, bro. I ain't trying to steal your thunder. I'm just a clown sometimes. I yield.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, it is a fact that AMPAG has roughly around 397 people. Um, no, I'm just playing. But
I was about to say,
that's what it
y'all
seems
doing
like.
good over there.
I was about to move to Georgia. No, I'm just kidding.
I almost moved to Georgia.
We don't have no damn
AMPAG,
300
excuse me.
people.
But I'll
Oh,
yield the floor to any questions or comments. I leave this up.
I'm gonna build up. Go
Yeah.
ahead. No, I was just finna say,
I yield.
Just speaking about what you say about the people as a wazir, understanding where my state is, there's no way, right now I don't see the state really can handle that. It's a process thing as it goes. So that's a whole bunch of people. But with that, I yield.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it again, this is, and I consider myself spiritually inclined. And for those who know me, prior to statehood, right? I had I still have a personal YouTube channel that I tried to delete. I didn't know how to delete it. I deleted around 80 videos. I think it was 77 videos that was based around nothing but spirituality, right? Why did I do that? Now, this is just me personally. I deleted that because in a lot of those videos, even though it was truth, in which that everybody's entitled to their opinion, even without the factual evidence. Um, Even though those videos were filled with interesting topics, right? Many of which we hope to find out even more about by way of utilizing statehood first. I realized that I needed to ground myself and mature myself. Now, again, me being spiritually inclined, I knew that my moon is a Capricorn, right? I knew that's interesting about myself. But guess what? I had to discard a certain reality in order to maintain a certain character and transmute my mentality into that of a government state official, specifically that of a prime minister. But now we are about to take over all venues of information when we're sharing this information as far as Moroccan states. It's going to touch every aspect of everybody's life in some type of way, whether you see it or not. But this comes by a narrow way in which that what I'm getting to here is that you have to shape and mold your mind and your character, right? Nationality that you want to reclaim so much being a quality of character, and which is only given to you by way of the person, the state. So you got to think higher self, right? Unified before you thinking lower self. You're thinking too small if you're talking individual stuff. But there's a bendu point. There's a small and narrow, strict and narrow lane that we must go through, right? There's a lot of attention that's going to be drawn to us. Do you want to answer questions about the spiritual video that you released 15 years ago that has some outlandish opinions, or do you want to answer questions about why Moroccan states are thriving because of law? Because these are going to be distractions that you can be willingly giving to people. It's a strict and narrow road right now for a reason. It's a lot of seats of office is not being exercised right now. It's a lot of things in the state government that we wish we could have right now, but we're not entertaining right now. Why are we not talking about money right now? Because in order to even mention that and be ready to, are y'all aware that according to the Act of Algeciras, if Maru State Republic, being a Moroccan state that has reclaimed Indiana, wanted to talk about money, first and foremost, you got to follow the treaties, right? Okay, what the treaties say? In a basic sense, Maru State Republic, we need a great number of Qadis, tax assessors, i.e. commissioners, in order to talk about money. We talking about liens, we talking about all this type of stuff. Okay, we need a great number of people for us to align ourselves with treaties and how we first got to start off. That's first and foremost. So this is causing us to mature our minds into saying, okay, yeah, we know the money is there. We know all these interesting concepts of wanting to change the name of the streets and be monumental. Yeah, that's going to come. But you got to go through this strict and narrow path to decolonization, in which the France versus United States of America case, what does it say? Only by way of consular courts. Okay. And in that way only. Okay. This is res judicata. Right? We got treaties, we got res judicata. By consular courts, and in that way only. What does that mean? Well, when things are going to be sent to the court, what does that mean? Case. I got to come through and get a case number. What does that mean? Interactions. With who? The colonizers. Okay. So we're talking about is exactly what in AMPAC study sessions, in the AMPAC study sessions, for those who've been paying attention, for those who've been present, especially Jay Bay has been talking about this going through the fire, not just saying, hey, I'm a noble, I'm a more, respect me. No, that's not how, read the law. You got to go through consular courts. We talk about consular courts, it's a whole setup as far as how a court would get involved in the first place, right? So we talking about decolonization, we talking about going through consular courts, talking about needing active Moors as government officials, right? We're not talking about the right now situation. So I just want to, I don't want to keep going on with that, but I yield the floor to any other questions or comments that anybody would like to bring to this.
What event is a kill? Kill.
You there?
Okay, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to camelback off the things that you were saying. First of all, great class for the little bit that I saw, but I know from the beginning it was excellently put together. You're talking about the name of that channel was Spirit Alchemy, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yep. That was indeed an excellent channel. And there is a spiritual aspect to what we're doing. But man, what you just said is right on target when you talk about you have to transmute yourself into the mindset of a government official. And it's so important because we've been out of that realm for centuries, right? And in order for us to get back to the constitutional fold of government in a competent way and in a powerful way, we gotta have tunnel vision. there's nothing else to talk about. The only thing that there is to talk about is international law and Moroccan law as it relates to statehood and decolonization. That's why, as you see, last week we had to shut down the whole trust conversation because that has nothing to do with decolonization. The Moors been doing that for a long time. So we have to transmute our minds. Same, the Moorish Americans got to do that. We all got it. Black people got to do that. So I just wanted to point out that that was a hell of a point of interest, good brother. Excellent work, bro. Keep on the good work. Keep up the good work. And I'm also seeing a lot of the people that's in the AMPAC media classes are in this class as well. I love it. You know, we got to keep this thing going. We got to spread this knowledge. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you kind of went out the last 3-4 seconds.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was asking, could you hear me? We got to spread this knowledge. We got to keep shedding light on this information because that's the only way that we're going to be able to change the narrative, change the vernacular, change the literature. Like Noble said, you change the literature of the people, you change the people, right? But what is that literature? What is that vernacular? Terms like uti possidetis juris, just cogents, so on and so forth. Aside from writs and affidavits and those that type of language, the old language has never served us. This new language that's coming from international law and statehood is the key to liberation. So it's important for us to stick to the strict sense of that if we really want our liberation, but not just to gain the liberation, but also maintain it for hundreds of years to come, which also comes with teaching the new generation. That's why we all must be erudite, right? And so I commend this platform, this class. Thank you for doing that, Akil, Kendon, Amir, WRC, Wazirs. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone showing up to this class. Continue doing so. Let's share it. Let's keep supporting this movement because this is the key to our liberation. Islam, I yield.
And I just want to point out that too, if you all could just go back and look at the documents, every document that Akil presented, even when I stepped in, what I chose to read from, like those are the things that you have to really read to really understand really what's going on, or your mind will get sidetracked. Like Akil said, you have to train yourself. It's not always easy at times because it's a fine attention that you need to really run a government or be in a governmental, official mind frame. But I mean, that's just really what it is, though. But I just wanted to point that out, and I thank everybody for coming. Islam.
And lastly, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay, real quick. And lastly, spirit alchemy is a transmutation, right? An internal transmutation. When they say Jesus turned water to wine, that is a transmutation of going from the lower self to the higher self. Water is the lower self, wine is the higher self. So that in and of itself was germane nonetheless. So I just wanted to point that out. Islam, I yield.
I would encourage everybody to go to the Meru State Republic page. It ain't about the personal page. I really don't post anything anymore on that personal page unless it pertains to Moroccan statehood. So, but are there any more questions and comments before we close out here?
When's the next class, my brother? Islam.
The next class it's usually at random. We try to make it on days where everybody, all the wazirs who are hosting are able to, be present. I myself try to do it on days where I'm child free. As you see that wasn't one of these nights starting off. So it's at random, really, what I'm getting down to. So we'll make sure, nonetheless, that we promote it several days in advance before the actual date, though, so everybody has a fair chance. But it will be a reoccurring link, so that if you have the link right now, it'll be the exact same link next time.
Okay, yes, Mom.
Obviously this class is recorded. Are you gonna load it up on YouTube as well, good brother?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. Right. Any other questions or comments before we close here?
No.
All right. So it was a beautiful class, open
It was
forum.
a great class. You see, good job. It was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And thank everyone. This is Wazir Venetia Bay from Isle Carolina, not a member state, but joining. I'm coming, guys. I appreciate you all. I want you to know you all inspire me. I didn't know what my purpose was in life until you guys found me. I actually asked the universe to use me for what is now needed, and this is what I came to. So thank you guys. I appreciate it, and I definitely appreciate all the time that you guys make. You make time for what you want, and so it's a lot of us that's involved, and it just makes me. And once you know, you can't go back. So it's no going back for me. So Islam, thank you.
It's on. All right. So yeah, and thank you, Wazir Venetia, for Al Carolina in the making, right? Not yet a state, but a political group forming a state. So can't wait to see a lot of other Moroccan states. But and just to reiterate right quick, just to take away from this, the theme of this open forum, again, the concept of municipal law, if you will, being the lower self, right? Trust law, opposed to international law, and understanding that aspect as far as how trust operates, how it relates to the state constitutions and full powers, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate everybody for attending. I hope to see you all in the next class here coming in the near future, I'm sure. And I'll be sure to promote that as I hope all of you will do the same. So thank you all for coming. Peace and love. Again, thank you.
Islam. Akil, send me those three contact graphics for your states. Send them to me, bro, so I can promote it on the Sunday classes as well. But great class. Thank you, brother.
Okay, we'll do Islam.
Islam.
Islam,
Islam. Peace and blessings. Thank you so much, Akil.
Brother Amir.
Brother Wazirs.
Peace and love, everyone.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. Peace and love.